What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the game week preview ahead of game week 16. There is a lot to go through. So we got potential postponements for Spurs, what the knock-on effects of that are for blank game weeks, double game weeks, other teams that are going to miss out, whether we should be taking hits. People are talking about free hits for goalkeepers, Man United options, West Ham versus Man City midfielders. Going to go through it all in this video. So if you do enjoy it, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here as well. Don't forget to check out my 888 Sport article. There is a link in the description where I've gone through some of these topics if you like the written format as well. Otherwise, let's jump into it. All right, we'll start off with potentially the biggest news. I say potentially because none of this is confirmed yet. There's just speculation. And to be honest, I kind of agree that the Spurs versus Brighton match will probably be called off. I'd be very, very surprised if it goes ahead after Spurs' European match was postponed, right? So it looks like Brighton versus Spurs will probably be off. By the time you're watching this video, it might have already been called off. I'm going to talk through as if it is going to be off and what the kind of knock-on effects from that are as well. It's also worth saying that kind of Brendan Rodgers said that 7 players haven't travelled for their European game. Some of them are COVID related. So it's a little bit of a difference that Spurs have had to shut the training ground and stuff like that. They've had a bit of an outbreak. That's how it's being reported. Leicester haven't had that. The match is still being played. So there shouldn't be too many issues. But the problem with this is, unless there's leaks and stuff like that, you don't tend to find out who the players are. So it's a little bit of kind of hope that if you've got maybe a couple of Leicester players and Brendan Rodgers doesn't name them, which is absolutely fair enough. That's what happened last year. Most of the time clubs didn't name who had COVID or who tested positive and stuff like that. You're just going to have to hit and hope. And if you were going to thinking about getting rid of him anyway, maybe that's the cue to get rid of him. So Jamie Vardy, for example, obviously we'll find out from who plays in the Leicester game or who's in the squad, right? That'll give us some indication of who's available. But it's worth keeping an eye on those things. But this isn't really about Leicester. This is more about Spurs, right? Because it looks like their game could be called off. Now, the knock-on effects, of course, are... It's not just Brighton that might get called off. There could be more games. We saw this last year. One game would get called off, then the next game would get called off, and you don't find out straight away. But he could miss the Leicester game as well. So it's not just Spurs players that are going to miss out. Brighton would miss out as well this week if the fixture gets called off. Leicester players as well. And there's nothing to say that by next Sunday, the 19th, Spurs will be back and playing. They've got to get back into training first, then they've got to get the players ready. So there's nothing to say that Liverpool game will definitely go ahead as well. Now, the Liverpool game is probably less of a concern because we're all in the same boat, right? We've all got 3 players, but it does bring about the point about having a strong bench, right? You probably do want at least 2 playing players on the bench. You could start shifting money around to have a stronger bench with like £6-7 million players on there. I still don't think that's the right call in the long run, but having at least 2 playing outfield players, maybe even 3 if you can, is definitely worthwhile if this situation is going to continue. Right now it's just Spurs. We don't know if other clubs are going to have this same thing. Now, for me, if I've got Spurs players, I'm probably selling them, right? You can wait a bit longer till the deadline to see whether the Brighton match gets postponed, but there's a good chance of that happening. Then the midweek fixture against Leicester could get called off as well. So that's 2 matches at a time when a lot of people were thinking about getting rid of them anyway. And most of the 2 players that people have got are Kane and Son, right? Very expensive. It's a lot of money to have sat on your bench for the next week or 2. I would cash in. For Kane, you could go to Antonio, to King, to Ronaldo straight away, right? Or whatever you want. You could downgrade right down to a 4.5 million forward, spend the cash in midfield. With Son, there's Man City players. You could go for a Man United option. We're going to talk about all these players as we go through the video, but I would probably be looking to offload. If you've got like an Eric Dyer or a Ben Davies, it's a little bit different because they're cheap, right? You could just bench them. It's all going to depend on how many you've got. Just to kind of answer some of the other things that came up. Yes, I think hits are definitely okay if you've got lots of issues. Someone tweeted me they had 3 Spurs players, 3 Brighton players, and Tony and Smith Rowe, right? A few hits is not going to be a problem, especially if these players are likely to miss one game. If they're not going to play, they're going to get you no points. So yes, you're going to spend 4 points, but at least the player you're getting in is going to, play and then hopefully get you some more points. So I think hits are okay. Again, I'm not going to put a limit on it like an 8-point hit is definitely okay and a 12-point hit is definitely okay. 16-point, it depends. It's all going to depend on your squad. Some people will only need a -4, some might need a -8, some might even need a -12. And in the right circumstances, that's not necessarily an issue, but you have to keep in mind who's on your bench as well. Let me quickly talk about Brighton, because if this game is called off, obviously they missed the game week. A lot of people are going to be in a situation where they don't have a goalkeeper because either they've got Sanchez and Steele or they've got Sanchez and Foster. So there's a question about hits for goalkeeper, which I might just do now. Yes, I would take a hit for a goalkeeper, but make sure you're taking a hit for the right one, because the interesting thing is, if this game is called off, every time there's a blank game week, right? So that game would be called off. That would be then called a blank game week for Spurs and a blank game week for Brighton. That fixture has to be played elsewhere, and then you start getting double game weeks. And Brighton are already going to miss game week 24, because I think that's when Chelsea are playing in the World Club Cup. I think that's why that fixture's postponed already. So because of that, Brighton potentially going to have this game off and this game off. That means at some point, Brighton are going to have to play 2 extra fixtures. That's potentially 2 double game weeks, unless they have a triple game week, but I'm not getting into that right now. They could have 2 more double game weeks. So it might actually be worth keeping Sanchez if you can afford to have a second playing keeper on your bench. Because then when that double game week comes around, you're not worried about spending transfers more on goalkeepers or using wildcards and stuff. You've got your double game week goalkeeper there. So again, there's not a right or a wrong answer. Right? If you've not got much money and you really need to just sell Sanchez, then you could definitely do it. But if you've got a decent squad, decent team value, you can get a second playing goalkeeper in, keep Sanchez on the bench for when he's got a bad fixture, waiting for those double game weeks. That could be a plan as well. But that is worth noting that if this match gets called off, obviously it has to be rearranged, and they've already got a blank game week, which was Chelsea at home. Yeah, so it was for the World Club Cup. So they're not easy fixtures, but double game weeks, especially for goalkeepers, can be pretty lucrative. So that's something to think about as well, kind of the knock-on effect. So right now, at the time of recording, no matches are postponed, but I'd be very surprised if Spurs versus Brighton isn't. And I would, for my Spurs players in particular, the attackers, I'd be looking to get rid. So this question's come up a lot, right? With 4 players flagged, and this isn't necessarily, this could just be injuries, right? It's not necessarily worries about Spurs players and stuff like that. But with 4 players flagged, is free hit worth it? Would you have 1 or 2 transfers the following week? So no matter whether, like right now, you've got 1 or 2 free transfers, whenever you use your wild card or whenever you use your free hit, you always only have 1 afterwards. So if you've saved to 2 free transfers, then you use your free hit, the next week you'll only ever have 1 free transfer, just to get that out of the way first. Ultimately, I'd be very surprised if anyone really needs a free hit, because the problem is when you use a free hit, you get your team back the next week. So if you've got a load of Spurs players, if you've got Tony, right, who I think has been confirmed to be missing the Watford game, possibly going to miss the Man United game, if you've got other injured players, it's all well and good getting rid of them for this week, but you then get them back for next week. So unless they're all suddenly available, unless suddenly Spurs say, yeah, all the rest of our games are on, then you're going to be stuck in the same position. So in most cases, you're probably it's probably more worthwhile taking them out with a hit, right? The free hit should be used really when you're happy to get your team back, the previous team back. So a lot of the time, it will get used in a blank game week. So later on in the season, again, I'm not going to get into why and all that now, it's just not worth it. But later on in the season, there'll be bigger blank game weeks because of cup competitions. And you could have like 5 or 6 teams plus, maybe more, missing out. And in that situation, you've built your team and it looks good, and you want that team back the week after, but for the blank game week, they're not going to play. So then you sub in loads of players that are going to play that week, then you get your good team back the week after. And that's generally when the free hit's used. There are situations where you might use it in a double game week, for example. Maybe like you want a player for that particular week, but you don't want them afterwards. Right? We'll come on to that later on in the season when the free hit is going to be really valuable. But right now, I just wouldn't do it, because if you're free hitting to get rid of like players on the screen like Sanchez, Kane, Tony, Son, maybe not Sanchez, but the other 3, they could then be issues the week after as well, and then you're still stuck in the same position where you could have used a hit, but instead you've used your free hit. So like taking points hits, I mean. So in most situations, like there'll be some people out there maybe it's worthwhile, but I highly doubt it for the most of you. I would try and avoid using it if you can. Just take the hits instead. There were a few different kind of questions about Man United options. Some people asking about Dalot, some people asking about midfielders, some were asking about Ronaldo versus Fernandes. So I'll just quickly kind of summarise my thoughts on Man United players right now. And it's worth saying we've only seen 2 games under Rangnick. One of the games in the Champions League completely changed side, or they did stick with a kind of 4-2-2-2 formation. So that probably is the one that he's going to use going forward, although he could adapt to different games. So just to quickly answer the questions. 1, on Dalot, I'd be very surprised if he's not now first choice. The match last night was obviously to build fitness in some players like Luke Shaw. Wan-Bissaka did have a bit of an injury, but Wan-Bissaka didn't cover himself in glory. I don't even think it's necessarily the attacking. I just don't think he's that good of a defender either. So if some people think that Dalot is not great in defence, I'm not sure Wan-Bissaka is that much better, to be completely honest with you. I think he's much better going forward. He can deliver the ball better. He's less awkward in attack. And also, Wan-Bissaka got stretchered off last night with an injury. Apparently, he had like a bit of a wrist injury and another knock as well. So he's not going to start this week. And I think Dallow's going to play himself into being the first choice right back. Again, it's only been a couple of games. It could come to the point where Wan-Bissaka comes back in. I cannot guarantee it. But everything I see now says that Dallow's probably going to be first choice for a little while at least. 4.4 seems like a good price. Yes, Man United defence hasn't been great, but Rangnick's very clear of knowing that, and he's talked about that, and he wants more control, and I think we'll see that. Plus, obviously, the fixtures are great as well. So Dallo, if you need a cheaper defender, you're on a wild card, I think he looks like a pretty good pick, personally. Ronaldo versus Fernandes, for me, there's not really too much of a contest right now, I don't think. Like, Fernandes' goal threat from open play has come down a little bit versus last year, not a huge amount, and overall, I don't think he's having as much of an influence. Obviously, again, it's a clean slate under Rangnick, things might change, but 11.6 million is just too much to spend when Ronaldo probably has penalties permanently now. We don't know that for sure, but he did take the last one, so it would kind of point to that. I just don't think anyone can realistically find a slot for Fernandes while Salah's still in. So for me, it's just not an option. I think Ronaldo is the better option while he's on penalties, higher goal threat, etc. When a forward gets goals, obviously the bonus is a little bit higher too, like the potential to get bonus. So the other option is the other midfielders. Now, the only player I would say last night in the second kind of team that did themselves any justice really was probably Greenwood. But there's and this is the problem. There's a lot of competition for those attacking places. Like, if Greenwood was to come in, would it be alongside Ronaldo, or would he play instead of Ronaldo when Ronaldo needs a rest? And would Rangnick keep someone like Rashford up there with the pace? We just don't know enough yet. So if I was buying a midfielder, Rashford or Sancho, I'm still quite unsure. Rashford's going to be closer to goal. I think Sancho's going to be more of an influence from behind, maybe creativity-wise, and Rashford probably getting more goals is how I would see it. So if I had to buy one right now, with all the information we got, I'd probably go Rashford, but I don't really have too much reason why that is, other than that fact, I think between the two of them, like if they were going to get the same amount of attack and returns, I feel like Rashford would probably get slightly more goals and Sancho slightly more assists. And obviously goals are worth more. But realistically, it's a punt, right? We haven't seen Man United very often. We've only seen the first, and I would say the first team under Rangnick once. But there are some really good fixtures. So if you're going down the cheaper striker, bigger midfield, maybe a Man City midfielder and a Man United midfielder or whatever it would be, I'd possibly go Rashford. But it's based on very little, if I'm completely honest. So Dallo and Ronaldo probably the two key players. And then it's just which midfielder do you want to take a punt on. I really like Sancho. I really want it to work out for him. Obviously, I don't hate Rashford either. I just think right now, Rashford more likely to get a goal. At least that's my gut instinct right now. So quite a few questions about... I mean, I've put Man City versus West Ham kind of midfielders, but realistically, it's like Man City versus Bowen. Now, obviously, there are a few price differences, right? Bowen is the most expensive West Ham midfielder we're looking at, whereas the cheapest Man City midfielder we're looking at is 0.8 more expensive in Gundogan, right? It's 7.3. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the fixtures. We know that West Ham have got a good fixture run. We know that Man City got a good fixture run, right? Any of these players are going to be decent enough options. So for me, the big question, Bowen versus Man City, I would probably be tempted to go for Bowen, right? If you look at those numbers on the right-hand side, his expected goal involvement numbers are higher than Bernardo Silva. And I know Bernardo Silva's in form. Everything he hits turns to gold. I get that. I'm just not convinced that's going to continue. And in terms of minutes, right, again, we are about to come into a period where players are playing this weekend, then they're playing midweek, then they're playing next weekend, then they get a week off, and then it's another 3 games in quick succession. So any player, I feel like I've said that so many times, but any player could miss out. So Bowen could miss a game. I'd be very surprised if Bernardo Silva plays all 6 of the next fixtures as well. He could miss out 1 game, right? I'm not saying he miss out any more than that. So those two are quite comparable. For Bowen, you get a lot. You saved 1.1 million, and you got a better, not a better player, but a player with better underlying stats, right? And I don't really think you can even use the form thing because Bowen's got plenty of returns so far this season as well. I think he's got 10 attack and returns, 7 assists, 3 goals. So obviously monitor what happens in the West Ham European game tonight, whether he gets a rest, whether he plays 90 minutes or gets injured. But right now, if I was picking one, I'd probably go for Bowen. I think Benrahma and Fornat, like Benrahma for me just has really dropped off in terms of underlying numbers and goals and assists and stuff like that. I just wouldn't be looking at him at all. If I couldn't spend that extra 0.5, I don't think Fornals is a bad option at 6 million for 0.37 expected goal involvement, given West Ham's fixtures. But he's not really where I'd want to go. I definitely would want Bowen instead, because I just think there's plenty more returns coming from him over the next few weeks, and he's played. I can't remember exactly how many it is, but he's played a lot of 90 minutes as well, Bowen. So he's the one I'd go for. Out of Man City midfielders, Foden. I've not got Sterling or De Bruyne on here because they're way more expensive. Foden would worry me right now because he's come off at half-time in the Champions League. Thought that maybe was getting a rest, getting minutes into his legs. But then the rumours start coming out that maybe he's a little bit of a doubt. He could start the next game, but I'd be worried again over a fixture congestion period. How often is he going to come off before 90 minutes? It's all well and good having 0.86 expected goal on, which is super high. And if he was going to get the same amount of minutes as Bernardo Silva, he's a much, much better option in my opinion. But right now, I'm just not as confident as other people in how many minutes he gets over like the next 3 games. So if I had him, Foden, unless Pep rules him out this weekend, I would probably keep him. But I don't know if I would buy him right now. And I said that last week, and he started and he looked really good. So it is a worry because the fixtures are great, and if he does keep starting, he's brilliant. But I really need to see what Pep Guardiola says. And the same with Gundogan. Obviously, De Bruyne's back now. He could play. I think Gundogan's minutes are fairly secure going forward. Again, he's going to miss some minutes. He's going to miss the odd game. But his numbers look great. So I think between Bowen and the Man City players, I think Bowen gets as many minutes, if not a few more, with pretty decent numbers and a great price. So he's probably the one that I would prioritise. The thing is, I think it depends on when you're buying them, right? This week, Bowen's probably got the slightly better fixture, although it is away. Burnley's probably slightly easier than Wolves. But next week, Man City play Leeds and West Ham play Arsenal. So if I'm buying this week, I might go for Bowen first, then Man City next week instead. And obviously, there's nothing to say you can't have two. So just to wrap up, I think Bowen plus 1 Man City is probably decent. The second Man City midfielder I'd go for, I've got to be honest, I wonder if I would just buy Bernardo Silva at this point. I mean, I think if I was going to buy one, I probably would go Gundogan, but I wouldn't begrudge anyone, obviously, for going Bernardo Silva. Foden would depend on what Pep says. If he puts any more doubt in our minds from what he says about Foden in the press conference, I'd probably just ignore him at this point and maybe look to see what happens if he plays a good amount of minutes, comes through unscathed, maybe bring him in the week next week or the week after that. So as I always say, every week there's some kind of Cristiano Ronaldo question. Now, is he an essential transfer, or could our money be better spent spreading it around an extra Man City midfielder and mid-price strikers? So for the last few weeks, this is what I've been talking about, right? I never ruled Ronaldo out as a transfer, but I always had in the back of my mind, would I just go down to a kind of £6 to £8 million forward and then bulk up my midfield instead? And I guess I've kind of answered the question with my actions, right? Because I have bought, as I said yesterday on my team selection video, I have bought Cristiano Ronaldo, and the one thing that I feel I'm really missing is a Man City midfielder, right? So I can get Bowen in for Saka, so that's not really an issue. And let's not talk about Mboma again for this video. But I've got Ronaldo, and the one thing I feel like is missing is a Man City midfielder. But as I've just discussed, I'm not 100% sure on their minutes. I really want Foden, but I don't know if I can buy him right now. And I don't know how I would fit him in. So is Ronaldo an essential transfer, as the question went? I mean, no, you don't have to buy him. And by the way, it's worth saying as well, everyone's team setup is different. I have seen teams that are pretty similar to this, but instead of like Alonso, maybe they've got a cheaper defender, and then instead of Saka and Mboma, they've got Bowen and a Man City midfielder. Now, I can't even afford that. Even if I sell Alonso down to a £4 million defender, I can't afford that because my team value is not good enough. So if I can have Ronaldo and a Man City midfielder and Bowen, then that's definitely the route I would go for, right? That seems like the best play. But I've had to sacrifice a Man City midfielder. Now, the reason I did that is because, one, the fixtures coming up for Man United are great. Do I expect Ronaldo to play all these fixtures? Absolutely not, right? I think he's going to have to get rested at some point, either probably for Brentford, maybe for Brighton. We just don't know. And again, like I said on previous videos this week, you can't necessarily guess rotation. It would be obvious to rest him for the middle game, but it doesn't always work like that. If he's recovered for that game, he could play again. Then it's all going to depend on his recovery before Brighton. But I think he's going to get good minutes. Also, we have to take into account the fact that African Cup of Nations is going to happen. Now, there was a rumour that it's going to happen a little bit earlier, and therefore Salah might leave Liverpool a bit earlier, but there's been no confirmation about that, so I don't want to really get into that right now. But around these fixtures, he could be a potential captain option if Salah isn't a captain. I'm sure we're going to see some people captain him this week because he got fully rested in the Champions League against Norwich. So he is like a backup. And also, if those Spurs fixtures get postponed, and then soon around game week 20, 21, 22, whenever it happens, Spurs suddenly get a double game week. And bearing in mind, last year, when all this stuff was happening, a lot of the times double game weeks got sprung on us very quickly before the event. So usually we know double game weeks like weeks in advance, but sometimes it was like, bam, here's the fixture, it's coming very soon, there's a double game week. So having Ronaldo, I know we've all just hated having Harry Kane, right? And we're all probably thinking about selling him to Ronaldo. But Ronaldo is the perfect placeholder to get Kane back if there's a double game. And I know everyone's going to write him off. He's been rubbish. Why would you want him? Trust me, you see double game week fixtures, you will want Harry Kane. So if Salah goes to African Cup of Nations, then it's easy to go to Son. And if you've got Ronaldo, it's quite easy to go to Kane as well. So it's almost like a placeholder, which is why I've done it. And I think if I knew there was a Man City if Bernardo Silva had Foden's underlying stats with Bernardo Silva's minutes, then I definitely probably would sacrifice Ronaldo to get him. But the other problem is, which forward do you even go for, right? If you look at the list of mid-priced forwards right now, so let's even say 9.4, right? Antonio Dennis, they're cheap enough, right? You can probably get them without sacrificing Ronaldo to get your Man City midfielder. Jesus potentially got an injury. Again, Pukki's cheap. Jimenez bad fixtures. Tony's out. Morpay, I'm just not sure I would trust. Wilson has got Leicester this week and then bad fixtures, so you wouldn't want to go there. Ollie Watkins got Liverpool this week. Then he's got some good fixtures. But really, in the next 4 weeks, he's got to play Liverpool and Chelsea, so that's not even that easy either. So there's not really too many mid-price forwards I want. And that was really, to be honest, the ultimate kicker in why I went for Ronaldo over a Man City midfielder. The best option is probably to have both if you can swing it with your team. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of sitting on the fence. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to this. If you want to go the Man City route and there's a striker you want, happy days. If you're like me and there's not really a striker you want, I'm going to make do with some of the cheaper options, right, instead, and just get him in. If I need a backup captain, or if we find out Salah's going to miss a game or get rested, then I've got probably one of the next kind of best 2 or 3 captain options in my team. So that's why I went for it. Is it essential? No. But if you've got Harry Kane, it's a pretty obvious transfer in most situations. If you want to downgrade, no problem with that at all. But yeah, I think Ronaldo is a pretty decent option. He's going to miss a game, I'm sure, over Christmas. Let's just hope it's not too often. Okay, so question about Chelsea defence. Should we remove the double Chelsea defence strategy, right? So a lot of people on 2 of the 3 players you see on screen, Reece James, Alonso and Rudiger. So I think my opinion around this is fairly clear, right? If I had double Chelsea defence, I wouldn't be going out of my way to get rid of them because the fixtures are still pretty good, okay? So Leeds at home, possibly without Bamford, possibly without Calvin Phillips. Then Everton at home, who haven't been fantastic. Wolves away isn't too bad. Villa away, Brighton at home. They're okay 5 fixtures, right? So I wouldn't be going out of my way to sell them. I also probably wouldn't be going out of my way to get to double Chelsea defence if I didn't already have it. In fact, if I only had Reece James or I only had Rudiger, I only had Alonso, I probably wouldn't be buying a second Chelsea defender right now because they're just missing so many midfielders. And I think they've just, at the wrong time, obviously, Reece James missed a game, now he's back. And then Chilwell got injured, Kovacic, Jorginho, they've all been, and Kante as well. They are just missing that kind of solid midfield that they had. And so I'm not massively worried about having Chelsea double defence, but I don't think I'd be massively worried about not having it either, if that makes sense. And I do think at some point, if I want to get some money to upgrade my midfield, I probably will drop one of the Chelsea defenders to do it. That would be my current plan. Things can change. Maybe Cancelo gets injured or whatever. But right now, that would be my plan. So ultimately, if you're on it, I don't see it as a priority move to get rid of it. It can be used to fund a transfer if you wanted to, and if I didn't have it, I probably wouldn't be in a rush to get on it either. So there we go, lots covered in that. Hopefully it was useful. If it was, give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you are new around here. I might do a video tomorrow morning. I'm not quite sure what I do. I might do Capsy, to be honest, or I might do kind of one of those survey videos that I've done in the past as well. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Otherwise, we definitely will have a deadline stream tomorrow ahead of the deadline. And obviously, we'll look ahead to game week 17, 18, etc. next week as well. So thank you very much for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. And I'll catch you again tomorrow.